You are standing in the marble corridors of the Palatine Palace. The torches flicker. The air smells of wine, incense, and fear. Behind a massive golden door, you hear laughter. High, sharp, unhinged. A voice whispers beside you. No one leaves that room the same, not even the ones he loves. For centuries, Rome called him emperor, but behind these walls, he became something else entirely. A man who believed he was a god. A man who turned intimacy into a weapon. A man whose darkest desires reshaped the lives and bodies of everyone around him. So the real question is, how far can power go before it stops being human? And why did no one dare to stop him? You are small, too small to understand war. Yet the world around you is made of iron. The first memories Caligula carries are not lullabies or warm hands, but boots, hundreds of them, pounding the earth in a thunderous rhythm as Roman legions march across the frontier. He grows up not in a nursery, but in a military camp, where the fires crackle at night, and the air always smells of leather, sweat, and the metallic tang of sharpened blades. His father, the legendary General Germanicus, lifts him onto a horse, and the troops cheer. They call the boy Caligula Little Boots, a nickname born from the tiny soldier's outfit he wears, a costume that makes him look like a miniature commander. People smile at him. Soldiers ruffle his hair. Women whisper about how adorable he is. But children remember things, even the things adults think they don't. At night, when the tents grow quiet, he hears the stories the men share, stories of betrayal, poison cups, senators with false smiles, emperors who fear their own shadows. He learns early that in Rome, love is a luxury, loyalty is temporary, and power decides who sleeps peacefully and who doesn't wake up. His father tries to shield him. His mother, Agrippina the Elder, tries even harder. But destiny works like a slow-moving storm. You don't notice its arrival until the thunder is right above you. And for little Caligula, the storm was already gathering, quietly, patiently, promising that innocent nights by the campfire would one day be replaced with something far darker, something no child should ever grow into. It begins with a death. Germanicus, the hero, the father, the shield that stood between Caligula and Rome's cruelty, collapses suddenly. Poisoned, many whisper. Eliminated, others claim. Rome loses a general. Caligula loses the only man who taught him tenderness. The funeral torches burn for days, but grief doesn't get the chance to settle. Because in Rome, sorrow attracts predators. Emperor Tiberius, Germanicus's uncle, watches the grieving family closely, too closely. He sees Agrippina as a threat. He sees her sons as seeds of rebellion. And one by one, Caligula watches his world crumble. His mother arrested, his brothers imprisoned, starved, or exiled. His cousins drowned in political accusations stronger than chains. Imagine a child forced to stand still while soldiers drag away everyone he loves. Imagine him learning that tears are dangerous, that crying marks you as weak, that weakness marks you for death. Caligula learns the lesson quickly. He keeps his face blank. He keeps his voice soft. He keeps his thoughts locked away like forbidden scrolls. He smiles when Tiberius looks at him, even though that smile tastes like iron and fear. And so Tiberius does not kill him, not because he loves the boy, but because he finds him useful, a harmless ornament, a surviving branch of the Julian bloodline that Rome still worships. Caligula is brought to Capri, Tiberius's private island, a place known for pleasure, secrets, and corruption that slithers behind every curtain. There, he sees things no child should see. There, the last pieces of softness inside him dry out like petals left in the sun. He watches the emperor every day, learns his moods, learns his methods, learns that the powerful survive not by avoiding cruelty, but by mastering it. Caligula becomes a silent observer of depravity, and a future architect of it. On Capri, Caligula perfects his most dangerous weapon, obedience. He learns to laugh at Tiberius's jokes. He learns to kneel at the right time, speak at the right time, disappear at the right time. He becomes a ghost with a heartbeat, living carefully between every breath the emperor takes. Inside, a storm rages, but he never lets it show. When Tiberius kills, Caligula watches quietly. When senators are humiliated, he looks down at the floor. When the emperor turns his palace into a theater of sin, Caligula's face remains serene, almost beautiful in its emptiness. People begin to whisper, "The boy has no soul." Look at his eyes. They see everything but feel nothing. But that isn't true. He feels everything. Too much, perhaps. He feels the injustice of losing his family. He feels the fear of living beside a man who could snap his neck on a whim. He feels the cruelty of the world sinking into him like drops of black ink staining white parchment. And he makes a quiet promise to himself, a promise forged not in hatred, but in survival. If Rome wants a monster, then a monster is what Rome will get. It is on Capri that Caligula's identity fractures. The gentle child buried, the cold survivor rising. And when Tiberius finally dies, leaving the throne the boy raised in shadows, Rome celebrates, thinking the nightmare is over. They have no idea the nightmare has only just been born. Rome had not cheered like this in decades. You are standing among thousands as the Senate steps forward, their voices trembling with rehearsed devotion, declaring Caligula the new emperor. Flower petals fall from balconies. Trumpets echo across the forum. People cry openly, not out of duty but genuine relief. After years under Tiberius, the emperor of paranoia, exile, and silence, the city sees Caligula as a sunrise after a long winter. He is young, handsome, educated, a direct descendant of Augustus, a symbol of everything Rome used to be before shadows took over. Caligula walks through the cheering crowd like a man awakening from a nightmare. For the first time in years, he is not pretending. He smiles, truly smiles, and Rome melts for him. They call him the people's emperor. They call him the child of the legions. They call him the new hope. One historian would later write that the city had fallen in love with him in a way almost irrational. But how could they not? He frees prisoners. He invites exiles home. He orders grand games, lowers taxes, and promises to restore morality. Every gesture feels like a hand reaching out of darkness, offering warmth. For a brief, shimmering moment, Caligula is everything Rome wants him to be, everything he himself dreamed of being. But deep inside, something else stirs, something that Capri did not kill but transformed. A hunger, a void, a belief that survival requires dominance, and dominance requires control, and control requires obedience. And then, without warning, fate delivers a final blow to a young man who still hopes to be good. A sudden illness strikes him, violent, shattering, and mysterious. The city prays for him. Citizens sacrifice animals in the streets. Women tear their clothes, begging the gods to spare him. He survives. But the boy Rome crowned is not the man who wakes up again. They say fever can rearrange the mind, that when the body is broken, the soul cracks open with it. Caligula's illness lasts days that feel like centuries. Some nights he screams. Some nights he whispers to shadows. Some nights he forgets his own name. When he finally rises from his bed, his eyes are the same color, but not the same eyes. The affection Rome gave him begins to twist inside him. He starts to believe it is not admiration, but worship. And if Rome worships him, what does that make him? He begins to speak of himself not as emperor, but as something more, something celestial, something untouchable. At first, people think it's metaphor, a poetic flourish. But then small things change. Too small to notice unless you live near him. He demands absolute precision in every bow. He watches the Senate not like a leader, but like a predator measuring prey. He orders the construction of temples dedicated not to Jupiter, but to himself. Whispers begin. He thinks he is divine. He speaks as if the gods serve him. But the clearest sign is a shift in his view of intimacy. The young man who once craved affection now mistrusts it. He sees love as weakness, desire as domination, touch as power. He surrounds himself with people who fear him, not who care for him. The palace changes too. The marble halls grow colder, echoing with footsteps that move cautiously, strategically. Beautiful servants avoid eye contact. Nobles begin sending gifts not out of loyalty, but terror. Somewhere inside this transformation, Caligula convinces himself that his survival depends on becoming invincible, and invincibility requires shedding everything human. But it is the next step, the step he takes alone, that seals his fate forever. He begins to believe that gods do not obey rules. They create them. It starts with a laugh, a strange, sudden burst of sound echoing through the palace. A laugh too loud, too sharp, the kind that makes servants freeze. Caligula sits on his throne, watching senators kneel. He tilts his head slightly, studying them the way a child studies insects. Do you know why you kneel? His voice is soft, almost gentle. The senators exchange glances. They have answers, but they also sense the danger of choosing the wrong one. Caligula stands, walking slowly among them. His fingers brush across their shoulders as if blessing or marking them. No one knows. You kneel, he whispers, because you fear me, and fear is the purest form of love. From that moment on, his transformation accelerates. He orders new uniforms for his guards, dazzling, luxurious, impossible. He walks the palace floors at night barefoot, talking to statues as though they're old friends. He demands his image be worshipped in temples, side by side with Jupiter. He tells his council that the moon visits him in his dreams. He insists he can speak with the dead, but the darkest shift is internal. His need to control, to dominate, becomes insatiable. Intimacy is no longer an act of closeness, but a form of conquest. Affection becomes a test of loyalty. Desire becomes a ceremony of submission. Rome begins to feel the tremor beneath the surface, a tremor that warns of earthquakes. The emperor they celebrated is still there, smiling, but the smile is no longer warm. It is the smile of a man who believes he cannot be touched, cannot be challenged, cannot be refused. A man who thinks he has become divine. And divine beings, in Caligula's mind, are allowed anything, everything. The age of horrors is about to begin, not with wars or decrees, but with the private acts that would scar Rome's memory for centuries. They say you could always tell when Caligula chose his next victim, not because he announced it, but because the golden curtain, the one hanging at the entrance of his private chamber, would be drawn open. That night, the palace glowed with lamplight as soft music drifted through the halls. Inside the chamber, Caligula sat on a bed carved from ivory, his eyes half closed, his fingers tracing the silk sheets as if testing their surrender. The victim, a noble woman newly married, was brought before him. She trembled, not because he was emperor, but because she knew refusal was death. Caligula touched her cheek with the gentleness of a lover, and then whispered, "Your husband will wait outside until I am finished." Her tears did not move him. Her silence did not protect her. And when he finally opened the golden curtain again, the husband collapsed in humiliation. For Rome's god had taken what the man thought was his. Caligula walked past him barefoot, humming softly, as though nothing in the world had happened at all. That was the night Romans learned a new rule. Rule number 1, no love belongs to you when a god desires it. ACT 2, the banquet of shame. Caligula loved banquets, not for the food, not for the entertainment, but for the cruelty disguised as celebration. One night, he hosted a feast where Rome's most powerful men reclined on cushions, drinking spiced wine, unaware they were about to be destroyed. Caligula watched each man's wife, studying their hands, their hair, the way they avoided his gaze. Then he stood, raised his cup, and declared, "Tonight, I will choose the most beautiful woman at this table." The room fell silent. He walked through the hall, touching the faces of senators' wives as if selecting animals at a market. When he made his choice, he took the woman by the wrist and disappeared with her into a side chamber, leaving her husband frozen, trembling, praying. When Caligula returned, he described what happened in vulgar detail, loudly, proudly, while the husband sat with his head bowed, unable to breathe. That banquet became infamous in Rome for one reason. Rule number 2, a man's honor is a toy when the emperor is the one playing with it. This is the act that historians whisper about, the one they soften with euphemisms. Inappropriate conduct, unrestrained behavior, phrases meant to hide something much darker. Caligula would summon noble families to his chamber and make the daughters, some barely of age, sit beside him as he questioned them about innocence, loyalty, obedience. He would lift a chin with one finger, trace a cheekbone, examine them like fragile things built for his amusement. Then he would choose one. The parents watched helplessly. One senator reportedly fainted when Caligula led his daughter away. Another tried to speak, just one word, and was dragged out of the palace to be beaten for daring to interrupt the emperor's pleasure. These girls entered his chamber trembling, and left it changed forever. Some never spoke again. Some refused to marry. Some wandered Rome's streets at night, staring at nothing, whispering prayers to gods who had not come. This act carved itself into Rome's memory because it revealed the deepest truth about his reign. Rule number 3. Innocence is the emperor's favorite offering. ACT 4. The Sisters' Shadow. Caligula's sisters were jewels of the dynasty. Drusilla, Agrippina, Livilla, women raised in the same storms that shaped him. But whispers soon spread that Caligula blurred the line between family and desire, that he saw his sisters not as kin, but as extensions of his power. Drusilla was his favorite. He kept her close, too close. His hand lingered on her shoulder longer than a brother should. He called her my equal, my mirror, my bride in spirit. When she died unexpectedly, Caligula declared national mourning, as if an empress had fallen. He forbade anyone from laughing, feasting, or celebrating. Some say he kept her memory alive in ways that made Rome shudder. Others say his grief was the grief of a man who lost not a sister, but something far more twisted. This act became a symbol, a warning that Caligula's boundaries had dissolved completely. Rule number 4. Blood means nothing, not to a man who thinks he is a god. The final act is the most chilling because it wasn't a single moment, but a pattern. Caligula began selecting people, men, women, servants, nobles, and ordering them into his chamber not because he wanted pleasure, but because he wanted proof of obedience. He would circle them slowly, like a priest preparing a ritual. Touch them, test them, command them. Those who hesitated were punished. Those who obeyed were rewarded publicly and humiliated privately. He turned intimacy into a courtroom where he, the divine emperor, judged loyalty not by words, but by bodies. Some left the chamber crying. Some left shaking. Some never left at all. This final act taught Rome the cruelest rule. Rule number 5. In Caligula's world, your body is not yours. It is a measure of your loyalty. The descent. After these 5 acts, Rome began to change. Servants walked on tiptoe. Families hid their daughters. Husbands prayed their wives would go unnoticed. Nobles avoided eye contact with the emperor. Terrified a glance could seal their fate. The palace became a maze of secrets. Shadows stretched longer. The torches burned lower. And Caligula? He moved through it all with the calmness of a man who believed every desire was justified, every cruelty divine, every act sacred. The 5 acts weren't simply sins. They were symptoms, warnings, signals that the boy raised in fear had become a man who inflicted it. Rome understood too late. When you give a broken man unlimited power, he will make the world kneel to the shape of his wounds. The palace was once a place of laughter, marble halls full of echoing footsteps, servants exchanging gossip, senators pacing nervously but confidently, knowing tradition protected them. But under Caligula, everything changed. One morning, without warning, he ordered the palace doors to be locked from the inside, not metaphorically, literally. Massive iron bolts slid into place. Guards lined the corridors in double formation. Windows were shuttered, balconies sealed. Even the gardens were turned into surveillance spaces, where every leaf felt like an ear listening. The message was simple. No one leaves unless Caligula decides it. A hush settled over the palace. Not silence, but fear disguised as silence. You could hear the difference if you paid attention. Silence is peaceful. Fear silence is sharp, suffocating, like a breath held too long. Servants began walking as if the floor itself could betray them. Maids moved like shadows. Guards kept their eyes forward, never sideways, because even a glance could be misinterpreted. Caligula delighted in this new atmosphere. He called the palace my theater of truth. He believed that fear stripped people lies, leaving only their purer self behind. But what it really stripped was their humanity. He would wander through the corridors at night with a candle, the flame flickering against the marble. Sometimes he stopped at a door and simply listened. Servants inside would freeze mid-breath. Terrified the sound of lungs expanding could offend him. He enjoyed the power of silence. He enjoyed how the palace itself seemed to obey him, the walls bending inward, the shadows tightening, the air becoming thinner. It was no longer a home or even a palace. It had become a living cage, with Caligula as both master and monster. And no one, not servants, not nobles, not generals, knew who would be the next to suffocate inside it. Caligula soon grew bored of ordinary fear. He wanted fear with flavor, fear with artistry, fear that revealed people's souls. So he invented his games of obedience. He would summon dozens of people into a long hall, with a polished marble floor and tall torches flickering like watchful eyes. There, he conducted experiments dressed as ceremonies. He commanded a senator to crawl. He demanded a noble woman slap her own husband. He ordered foreign ambassadors to sing Roman lullabies. He forced gladiators to dance, dress in silk, or recite poetry. None of these actions meant anything. That was the point. Caligula wasn't testing strength or intelligence. He was testing submission, testing how far a person could bend before breaking. He watched each victim carefully, studying the trembling hands, the quivering lips, the way their dignity peeled away like paint from old plaster. Those who hesitated, even for a breath, faced consequences, sometimes a whipping, sometimes exile, sometimes death disguised as accident. But those who obeyed immediately received a reward, a smile, a pat on the cheek, a golden coin tossed casually at their feet. He treated obedience like a currency and his amusement like a divine blessing. One day he made a senator stand naked before the entire court, simply because the man had boasted earlier about his modesty. The senator obeyed, shaking with shame. Caligula applauded, delighted. Another time, he forced a general to kneel and sing to him until his voice cracked. When the man could no longer speak, Caligula whispered, "Loyalty sounds beautiful until it breaks." These games became routine. The palace doors would close, the torches would brighten, and people would perform their humiliation like actors praying not to be replaced. In Caligula's palace, obedience was not survival. It was the only language left alive. It wasn't long before Caligula decided fear needed a more permanent form, so he created the eyes. Spies were already common in Roman politics, but Caligula went further. He turned every corridor into a listening post, every servant into a watcher, every shadow into a witness. He paid kitchen boys to report conversations whispered over cooking pots. He bribed maids to slip into bedrooms at night and listen to couples talk in the dark. He stationed guards behind curtains, behind doors, behind the carved panels of walls. Some even hid beneath banquet tables, unseen, unheard, capturing every quiet complaint, every sigh, every hesitant glance. No one knew who the spies were. No one knew where they hid. The palace became a forest of invisible eyes. People began sleeping with their faces toward the wall, afraid their expressions might betray them. Some spoke only with their hands. Others refused to speak at all. But the worst part? Caligula enjoyed reading the reports. He treated them like love letters, evidence that the palace breathed fear of him with every heartbeat. He would call a servant who had laughed too loudly that morning, a senator whose wife whispered his name in worry, a maid who prayed too often. "I heard what you said," he would whisper. The terror in their eyes was a symphony to him. The palace no longer simply feared Caligula. It became Caligula, a reflection of his paranoia, his cravings, his absolute hunger for domination. By now, even Rome could sense the madness behind the marble walls. But no one dared confront him. No one dared breathe differently. No one dared hope, because in the palace of breathless walls, hope was the most dangerous sound of all. The corridors of Lord Alistair's manor were unusually silent that evening. Lady Evelyn walked with measured steps, her candle flickering against the cold stone walls. She had heard rumors, Dangerous rumors that the king's inspectors were arriving soon to investigate noble households. And if anyone discovered her meetings with Sir Rowan, both of them would be ruined. As she turned a corner, she spotted a shadowed figure standing near the window. It was Lady Helena, the Duke's sharp-eyed sister, known for noticing everything. "Out for a walk this late?" Helena asked softly, her voice drenched in suspicion. Evelyn forced a calm smile. "Couldn't sleep." Helena stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Be careful, my lady. Secrets don't stay buried long in places like these." Evelyn felt her blood run cold. Was this a threat or a warning? Meanwhile, Sir Rowan stood in the training yard, pretending to practice, but his mind was far elsewhere. The king's inspectors were not ordinary men. They were trained to detect lies, alliances, forbidden romances, and betrayals. And Rowan was guilty of all three. His friend, Sir Cedric, approached him. "You seem troubled." Rowan hesitated, then answered, "If the inspectors uncover anything, it won't just be me. Evelyn will suffer too." Cedric placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then end this before it destroys both of you." Rowan clenched his jaw. "End it? Impossible." He loved her too deeply. Just before midnight, the manor gates opened for a rider arriving under a black banner. The guards whispered nervously. Only one group carried such banners, the king's inquisitors. The rider removed his hood, revealing a cold, expressionless face with eyes that seemed to read every sin a man ever committed. "I am Inquisitor Thorn," he announced. "By order of His Majesty, no one leaves this estate until our investigation is complete." Inside the manor, Evelyn felt a chill crawl down her spine. Rowan, upon hearing the announcement, knew the truth. Their secret was no longer hidden. And Thorn never left the house without finding someone guilty. The game of deception had officially begun. Inquisitor Thorn began his investigation at dawn. Servants lined up nervously as he walked down the hall, his boots echoing like a judge's hammer. He asked questions slowly, carefully, watching every blink, every tremble, every hesitation. Lady Evelyn stood at the end of the line, maintaining her elegant composure. But when Thorn's icy eyes landed on her, she felt her throat tighten. "Lady Evelyn," he said, bowing slightly, "your reputation speaks of loyalty and virtue." His tone was polite, too polite. "Thank you," she replied quietly. "But rumors," he continued, "often speak louder than facts. I trust you won't mind if I ask a few personal questions later." Evelyn forced a graceful smile. "Of course." Inside, panic curled through her. Thorn knew something, or at least he suspected, and that was dangerous enough. Sir Rowan slipped into the old storage chamber behind the stables, where Evelyn had secretly sent word to meet him. The room was dim and filled with dust, but it was the only place away from Thorn's ears. Evelyn arrived moments later, her breath unsteady. "They're watching everyone," she whispered. "Thorn has doubts." He looked at me as if he could see right through my thoughts. Rowan moved closer, gently taking her hands. "We have to be more careful than ever." "I'm afraid," she admitted. "If he uncovers anything, I won't survive it. Neither will you." Rowan cupped her face. "Then let me take the blame. If he comes close to the truth, I'll say it was all me." "No." Evelyn grabbed his arm. "I won't let you sacrifice yourself." Their closeness hung in the air, too long, too dangerous. Neither noticed the faint creak of a floorboard outside the door. Someone was listening. Helena, sharp, silent, and observant, stood in the corridor, hiding behind a pillar. She had followed Evelyn out of suspicion, but what she overheard in the storage room was far more explosive than she imagined. A secret romance, a knight willing to take the blame, a lady terrified of exposure. Helena pressed a hand over her mouth, stunned. If she shared this with Inquisitor Thorn, she would gain immense favor, and perhaps destroy her rivals forever. But another part of her hesitated. This scandal could tear the entire household apart, and if the king discovered it, even Helena's own family might fall under suspicion. She stepped back, trying to calm her racing heart. "Do I reveal this or bury it?" she whispered to herself. Inside the storage room, Rowan and Evelyn still believed they were alone, but the truth was spreading, quietly, dangerously, and the walls of Lord Alistair's manor were no longer safe.